Good morning, my beautiful and intelligent students, and welcome to Chapter 3, Lesson 1. So, as you can see right behind me, this is going to be 3-1, and it's called Inequalities and their graphs. So, just inequalities and their graphs. So, what I want you to do is I'm going to step off the screen for just a moment, copy everything down, and then make sure that you listen to my instructions as I go over this. So I'm just going to step off the screen for a second, hit pause when I do, and copy this down. Okay, so we're back. You already have this copied down. That's great. So let's go over what we wrote. So we have an inequality sign replaces an equal sign, all right? So what we're doing, we're basically substituting what used to be an equal sign for an inequality sign. And if you take a look and you underline it, the word equal is inside the word inequality, right? So we're going to treat inequality signs the same way we treat an equal sign. That's where we draw our line. That's what divides our equations into two sides, one side and the other side. All right, so let's go over what our inequalities are. All right, so we have the less thans, right? So the less thans are always going to point towards your left, okay? They're pointing towards the negatives. They're pointing towards these smaller numbers because they're less than. So we have less than, and then this one is called less than or equal to, right? So we have our regular inequalities, and then we have the ones that have the extra line underneath it, and that means equal to. Then we have our greater than. So obviously they're going to be pointing towards the larger numbers, right? So they're going to be pointing towards the right. They're going to be pointing towards the positives because the positives get bigger and bigger. So we have our greater than. Now, the other thing on this graph I want you to notice is when we go to graph these, kind of like what you see right here, is they will have two types of dots. The regular inequality signs have an open circle. The inequalities that have the equal to part, or basically the line underneath it, kind of looks like an extra piece, then that dot means we color that in, right? So you do need to figure out a way to keep straight the difference between a less than and a greater than, right? Which way they're going to point. Here's one of my tricks. One, I kind of mentioned it. The less thans always point towards the negatives. They point towards 0. It's a smaller number. Greater thans point towards the bigger ones. The other thing that I sometimes do is I'll write the word less. And if I do this, L-E-S-S, it's hard to see, but it makes that look like an L. So it looks like the word less. If I try that trick on here, it looks really weird. So again, try to write down the word less to help you out. Okay, so there's our inequality signs. Make sure that you have this in your notes and that you consistently go back and review it until you have it memorized. So again, I just wanted to show a slight difference. So this is what we're used to doing, solving equations, right? We have an x plus 3 equals a 7. Now versus an inequality, we still have an x plus 3, and I chose to use the less than or equal to inequality 7, right? So again, you see how I just draw the line down from the equal sign, our balance beam. I went minus 3 because that's the opposite of plus. Minus the 3 from both sides. 7 take away 3 is 4. X equals 4. And that's your answer. You stop. We know because the variable is by itself. It's isolated. Now we come over here. We do the exact same thing. We take the opposite of positive 3. We go minus 3 on both sides. We get our 4. Same answer. But this time we drop down our inequality sign. And this says x is less than or equal to 4. Here's the one extra step we're going to be doing on in this chapter is we're going to be graphing them. And by graphing this, I simply make a simple number line. Worksheets will have a really nice pretty one. If you just have to do it freehand like I did, I just make it real simple. I write down your answer, so it's positive 4, so I put a positive 4. I put a 0, and then I put a negative 4 just so it shows that I know where negatives are and where positives are. Now, again, if I look at my little table right behind me, is the equal to's always have to have a closed dot. So you just put a closed dot above your answer. So if that would have been 17, you put the dot above 17. But our answer is 4, put the dot above the 4. And then you just think, x is smaller than 4. Well, 3, 2, 0, negative 50. All numbers smaller than 4. Those happen to be on this side of the of number 4. So I just draw my arrow going towards the smaller side. Okay? So that's basically the only difference between chapter 3 and chapter 2 is we're going to be graphing our answers at the end. Right? So we should do pretty well because we're just going to continue solving equations, but they're just going to have inequality signs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go put some examples on the board. So I'll be right back. All right, so here's 2 examples. I left our table up just for a quick reference. Go ahead and hit pause right now and copy these down. Okay, so now that you have these copied down, we have x is less than 3. Now the word is means it has to work like an equal sign. Okay, that's how we know it's not x minus 3. The word is kind of tells us that these are going to be inequalities. So our first thing is we literally just write down the x. We write down our 3. All right, now say I have a nice space between it. I put the x on the left side. And then I look for the symbol for less than. Okay, so I have my table right here. The less than, it doesn't say equal to, so it's my regular symbol. And this says x is less than 3. Okay, so our next step is just to do a quick graph. So I'm going to graph it. I'll put 0 in the middle. I'm just going to put a 3 off to the side, and I'll put a negative 3 over here. Now again, to graph these, all we really have to do is, again, this is a regular inequality, so it's going to have a plain or an open dot. And we're going to put that above the number 3. So we just put a dot above the number 3. And then it says x is less than 3. So think of a number smaller than 3. 4. Not 4. 0, right? Well, where's 0? Well, 0 is over here. So your arrow is going to go in this direction. So we draw our arrow. And this equation is now solved, right? So our next one says x is greater than or, and here's the equal to part, negative 4. I'm going to set it up exactly the same. I'm going to put an x. I'm going to write negative 4. I always put my x on the left, and then I leave a space between them. And it says greater than, so the greater thans look like this, but it says equal to. So I need that line underneath it. So I'm going to put x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Again, nice simple graph. If you don't have one, there's 4, there's negative 4. Now this one though has the equal to. And if you look, that's a closed dot. So again, put the dot right above whatever your answer is. So it said 4, negative 4. Put the dot above negative 4. So there's my dot. And then it says x is greater than negative 4. So you just think a number is bigger than negative 4. Any positive number is going to be bigger than a negative. So 1 is bigger than negative 4. And that's on this side. So draw the arrow going towards that direction. All right, so this is how you take inequalities that are written out and transform them into an algebraic expression and how you quickly graph them. We'll do a couple more examples. Okay, so I put a few more notes on the board. So go ahead and hit pause and copy down this section right here. After you copy those down, copy down these 2 examples. Make sure you put about 3 lines in between this example and number 5. So hit pause, copy down these new instructions. Okay, so now that you copy these down, I'll just read them out. So you got to put, how do we write an inequality? Well, let's just say, and they're going to do this on your homework, is they're going to give you a graph to look at. So here's our graph. It's on a nice little number line. So what do? I start looking at my steps. So step 1 is put an x on the left side. Watch, this is how easy this is. Always set it up this way. Put your x over here on the left. Boom. All right, step 2, put the number on the right. Well, which number? the number directly under the dot. So what's under the dot? This is a -2 if you can't read that, but it's a -2. Put that on the right-hand side. So there's the -2. That's all I did, right? Step 3, look at the dot. Now what's the dot going to tell us? Well, that's why I left this graph up. This dot, which is open, tells me it has to be either a greater than or a less than symbol. It's the one without the line. So you just looked at the dot, you know it's going to be one of these. And now all we have to do is actually match the inequality sign to the arrow. Well, this arrow is going that way, right? So I'm going to take the sign that's going in the same direction. And we're done. This says x is going to be greater than -2. How can I check? Take any of these numbers. 4. Is 4 bigger than -2? Yes. Is 0 bigger than -2? It is. So I can check that. So on number 5, we'll do the exact same thing. Step 1, put an x on the left. Step 2, find the number under the dot. Now this number happens to be 0. That's fine. Nothing wrong with using a 0. Now look at the dot. Tells us which symbols to use. So it's a closed dot. So that means it's going to be my equal to symbol. So it's going to be one of these. And then I match it to the arrow. Now this only works if you set it up with the variables on the left. But we'll adjust that a little bit later. So I draw that inequality sign in the same direction, pointing as the arrow. But remember, that's a closed dot. So that says equal to. So make sure that you have these now down on your paper, and we'll do a couple practice problems. All right, so here are your 2 practice problems that you're going to have to do on your own, and when you finish these, you'll call me over to your desk, and I will check to see if you understand the lesson. So practice number 1 is you have to graph this, so you have to graph x is greater than 1, and practice number 2, you have to write the inequality that's represented by this diagram. So make sure you copy these down, solve these, and as always, have a math-tastic day.